From the lightweight M22 Locust to the experimental behemoth M6 heavy tank, American armor in World War II evolved from peacetime training vehicles into the combat-proven machines that helped liberate Europe and the Pacific. This is every American tank that rolled into battle. Let's begin with heavy tanks.
Heavy tanks. Assault tank M4A3E2 Jumbo, the tank that could take a hit. Built in 1944 specifically for the D-Day invasion, the Jumbo was essentially a Sherman wrapped in extra armor. With 100mm frontal hull armor and 150mm on the turret face, it was the only American tank that could reliably survive a direct hit from a German 88mm gun. Weighing 42 tons and mounting the reliable 75mm gun, only 254 were built, but they led the charge as point tanks, absorbing fire that would have destroyed standard Shermans. General Patton himself requested more, and when denied, quietly ordered field crews to strip armor from disabled tanks to upgrade his own Shermans. Heavy tank M6, America's first modern heavy tank that never saw combat. Developed in 1940 as a 50-ton answer to multi-turreted European designs, the M6 mounted both a 76mm main gun and a 37mm cannon in a single massive turret. Protected by up to 100mm of armor and powered by an 800-horsepower Wright radial engine, it was an engineering marvel plagued by logistical nightmares. Too heavy for most bridges, too complex to maintain, and too late to matter, only 40 were built before being declared obsolete in December 1944. They toured America, crushing cars at war bond drives, never firing a shot in anger. Moving on to medium tanks. Medium tanks. Medium tank M2 and M2A1. The peacetime tank rushed into obsolescence. Designed in the late 1930s when America barely had a tank budget, the M2 featured a 37mm gun in a rotating turret and up to 8 machine guns bristling from sponsons. By the time France fell in 1940, it was already outdated, but 94 were built anyway for training purposes. The M2 taught American crews the basics of armored warfare, while better designs were rushed into production. Medium tank M3 Lee Grant, the ugly stopgap that saved North Africa. When the Army needed a 75mm gun immediately, but couldn't fit one in a turret fast enough, they bolted it into the hull sponson and added a 37mm turret on top. The result was a 27-ton tank with a dangerously high profile and limited gun traverse, but it arrived in British hands just in time for the Second Battle of El Alamein. Over 6,000 were built, serving as a crucial bridge until the Sherman could take over. Medium tank M4 Sherman, the backbone of Allied victory. Not the best tank on the battlefield, but reliable, easily repaired, and produced in overwhelming numbers. Over 50,000 Shermans rolled off American assembly lines, equipped with a 75mm gun, sloped frontal armor, and a reputation for catching fire when penetrated. What it lacked in individual superiority, it made up for in numbers, mechanical reliability, and the ability to be shipped anywhere in the world. The Sherman became the symbol of American industrial might. Medium tank M4A1 76mm, the upgraded Sherman that crews actually wanted. Armed with the high-velocity 76mm M1 gun, this variant could finally engage German Panthers and Tigers with some chance of success. The 76mm round could penetrate 100mm of armor at 1,000 yards, a massive improvement over the 75mm. First seeing action in July 1944, it arrived too late to prevent countless Sherman losses, but gave American tankers a fighting chance in the last year of the war. Medium tank M4A6 Sherman, the diesel oddball. Built with an Ordnance RD-1820 radial diesel engine to conserve gasoline supplies, only 75 were produced at the Detroit Tank Arsenal. While the diesel engine reduced fire risk, parts commonality issues and the engine's unreliability made it unpopular. Most saw service only in training units stateside. Medium tank M26 Pershing, the heavy hitter that arrived too late. Armed with a powerful 90mm gun and protected by 100mm of frontal armor, the 46-ton Pershing was America's answer to the German Panther. It could penetrate any German tank from the front and survive return fire. The first 20 arrived in Europe in January 1945, seeing limited combat in the final months. Had it arrived a year earlier, the Sherman's casualty rate might have been dramatically lower. Medium tank T-26E4 Super Pershing, the experimental monster. Taking a standard Pershing and adding massive armor plates welded to the hull and turret, plus a modified T-15E1 90mm gun with a longer barrel, the Super Pershing was a one-off field modification. Weighing nearly 50 tons with its add-on armor, it saw brief action in Germany in 1945, successfully engaging German armor before the war ended. Only one was built and deployed. American Fireflies, M4 and M4A3 with British 17-pounder, the American Shermans with British punch. While the British extensively converted Shermans to mount their excellent 17-pounder anti-tank gun, creating the Sherman Firefly, a small number of American units received these conversions through Lend-Lease reverse flow. The 17-pounder could penetrate any German tank, making these among the most potent American-operated tanks of the war, though they remained uncommon in U.S. service. Marmon Harrington MTLS-1GI-4, the failed export light tank repurposed. Originally designed for the Dutch East Indies, this 9-ton light tank mounted a 37mm gun in a 2-man turret. After the Netherlands fell, the tanks were taken over by the U.S. Army for training. Mechanically unreliable and under-armored, they served primarily as driver training vehicles and never saw combat. Now let's look at light tanks. Light tanks. Combat car, M1 and M1A1, the tank that wasn't called a tank. Due to National Defense Act restrictions, the cavalry wasn't allowed to operate tanks, so they called them combat cars instead. Armed with machine guns and weighing under 10 tons, these pre-war vehicles taught the principles of mobile warfare. The M1A2 variant was eventually reclassified as Light Tank M1A2 once the legal restrictions were lifted, serving primarily in training roles. Light Tank M2A2 and M2A3. The twin turret curiosity. Mounting 2 machine gun turrets side by side, the M2A2 looked like nothing else on the battlefield. Lightly armored at 16mm maximum and weighing just 10 tons, these pre-war designs were obsolete before Pearl Harbor. The M2A3 added a 37mm gun, but fewer than 400 of all variants were built, serving primarily in training and the Philippines defense. Light Tank M3 Stuart, called Honey by British crews for its smooth reliability. Armed with a 37mm gun and powered by a radial engine, the M3 was America's frontline light tank in North Africa and the Pacific. Weighing 12 tons with 51mm of frontal armor, it was fast, mechanically reliable, and ideal for reconnaissance. Over 13,000 were built in various versions, serving with distinction despite its light armament. Light Tank M5 Stuart, the M3's improved successor, featuring twin Cadillac V8 engines, improved armor layout, and better crew ergonomics, the M5 was quieter and easier to maintain than the radial-powered M3. Produced from 1942 onwards, over 8,800 were built. It remained in frontline service throughout the war in the Pacific, where its speed and reliability were valued over heavy firepower. Light Tank M22 Locust, designed to fall from the sky. At just 7.4 tons, the Locust was light enough to fit inside a Hamilcar glider for airborne operations. Armed with a 37mm gun and protected by minimal armor, it was too lightly built for conventional combat. Only used operationally once, during Operation Varsity in March 1945, it proved the concept was possible, even if impractical. Light Tank M24 Chaffee, the light tank done right. Mounting a lightweight 75mm gun adapted from the B-25 bomber, the Chaffee finally gave light tank crews serious firepower. Protected by up to 38mm of armor and weighing 18 tons, it combined the Sherman's gun in a fast, agile package. Production started in April 1944, with 4,731 built by war's end. First seeing combat in December 1944,
It was so successful, it remained in service for decades. Marmon Harrington, CTLS-4 TA and CTMS-1 TB1, the private venture light tanks that went nowhere. Developed by Marmon Harrington as private export designs, these small light tanks mounted machine guns or 37mm guns. Some were sold to foreign governments before the war, but they never entered U.S. Army service and remained curiosities of pre-war American tank development. Moving on to self-propelled guns. Self-propelled guns. 105mm howitzer motor carriage M7 Priest, named for the pulpit-like machine gun ring on its superstructure. Mounting a 105mm howitzer on a Sherman chassis, the Priest provided mobile artillery support that could keep pace with armored spearheads. Carrying 69 rounds and protected by open-topped armor, over 4,000 were built, serving extensively in North Africa, Italy, and Northwest Europe. British forces gave it the Priest nickname that stuck. 75mm howitzer motor carriage M8 Scott, the Stuart with a howitzer. By mounting a short-barreled 75mm howitzer on the M5 light tank chassis, the M8 provided close-range fire support for infantry and cavalry units. Its high-explosive shells excelled at destroying bunkers and machine gun nests. Over 1,700 were built, serving primarily in the Pacific, where its combination of mobility and firepower proved ideal for island warfare. 155mm gun motor carriage M40, the long-range killer. Mounting the powerful 155mm M1 Long Tom gun on a widened Sherman chassis, the M40 arrived late in the war but delivered devastating firepower. Capable of firing a 95-pound shell over 23 kilometers, it could destroy fortifications and concentrations of enemy armor from positions of complete safety. Only 418 were built before war's end. 8-inch howitzer motor carriage M43, the M40's bigger brother. Swapping the 155mm gun for a massive 8-inch howitzer, the M43 fired a 200-pound shell designed to obliterate German fortifications during the final push into the Reich. With only 48 built by war's end, it saw limited action but demonstrated American artillery had reached its logical extreme. 105mm howitzer motor carriage M37, the late war upgrade. Based on the M24 Chaffee chassis and mounting a 105mm howitzer, the M37 entered production too late to see World War II combat. It combined the Chaffee's excellent mobility with artillery firepower, becoming standard equipment in the post-war era and seeing extensive action in Korea. 105mm howitzer motor carriage T-19, the failed M3 half-track conversion. Mounting a 105mm howitzer on a half-track chassis proved impractical due to weight and recoil issues. Only prototypes were built before the program was canceled in favor of fully tracked designs like the M7 Priest. 75mm howitzer motor carriage T-30, another half-track experiment that didn't work. Attempting to mount a 75mm howitzer on the M3 half-track created similar problems to the T-19. The recoil was too much for the lightweight chassis, and the project was abandoned in favor of the M8 Scott. Continuing with self-propelled anti-aircraft guns. Self-propelled anti-aircraft guns. Multiple gun motor carriage M13 and M14, the early half-track AA platforms. The M13 mounted twin .50 caliber machine guns on an M3 half-track, while the M14 used the M5 half-track. These provided mobile anti-aircraft defense for armored columns, though their effectiveness against modern aircraft was limited. They excelled against ground targets and low-flying aircraft. Multiple gun motor carriage M16 and M17, quad .50 caliber devastation. Mounting 4.50 caliber machine guns in a powered turret, the M16 on M3 chassis and M17 on M5 chassis
created a wall of lead effective against aircraft and devastating against infantry and light vehicles. Over 2,700 M16s were built, becoming infamous in ground support roles in Europe and the Pacific. Combination gun motor carriage M15 and M15A1, mixing it up with 37mm and .50 caliber. The M15 combined a 37mm automatic cannon with twin .50 caliber machine guns in a single turret mounted on an M3 half-track. The M15A1 used the M5 half-track. This combination proved effective against both air and ground targets, with nearly 1,700 built. Combination gun motor carriage T28E1, the experimental upgrade. Mounting a 37mm gun and twin .50 caliber machine guns on an M24 Chaffee chassis created a fast, well-protected anti-aircraft platform. Development came too late for World War II, but the concept proved sound for future designs. Finishing off with flamethrowers. Flamethrowers. Flamethrower tank M4A3E2, officially designated POACWSH-1, Pacific Ocean Areas Chemical Warfare Service H-Series 1. Converting standard M4A3 Shermans by replacing the bow machine gun with a flamethrower, these terrifying weapons saw extensive use in the Pacific. The flame could reach 150 yards and was devastating against Japanese bunkers and cave positions. E7-7 Mechanized Flamethrower, the first-generation tank-mounted flamethrower. Developed early in the war, this system could be installed in various tank hulls, replacing machine guns with flame projectors. It proved the concept of armored flamethrowers, leading to more refined designs. Light tank M3A1 Satan, the Steward with a flamethrower. Converting the bow machine gun position to mount a flamethrower created a fast, mobile incendiary platform. Used primarily in the Pacific, its light armor was a liability, but its speed and flame range made it effective in the right circumstances. Sherman Crocodile, the British design adopted by Americans. While primarily a British creation towing a fuel trailer and mounting a powerful flamethrower, some American units operated Crocodile-equipped Shermans in Northwest Europe. The towed trailer system allowed for much greater fuel capacity and sustained flame operations compared to internal system. From the experimental M6 heavy tank that never fired a shot to the jumbo assault tank that led the charge through Normandy, American tank development tells a story of pragmatic engineering and overwhelming production. Early designs like the M2 and M3 Lee were obsolete before they rolled off the line, but they bought time for the Sherman to arrive in massive numbers. The Sherman wasn't the best individual tank, but its reliability, ease of repair, and sheer quantity made it the backbone of Allied armored victory. Late war improvements like the 76mm gun and the Pershing showed America could build sophisticated armor when needed, but the war was won by mechanics keeping thousands of Shermans running. American tanks didn't dominate through technical superiority. They won through industrial might, battlefield adaptability, and the determination of their crews.